You know, completely unrelated, but if you just take some cheese and put it in a bowl and melt it, it actually makes a surprisingly good snack. Yeah. Now, Star Driver is a 25 episode anime produced by Studio Bones and licensed by Amniplex. It's a mech show, as I've previously pointed out, and it's a pretty interesting watch. It's fun to watch, I know that much, but it's not really that great. It's got some hidden little flaws, but that doesn't necessarily make it a bad show. Now let's analyze some of these flaws that I personally had with the show and see if it's a show that you personally want to watch. Now, Star Driver takes place on an island that's probably somewhere near Japan, following our main character Takuto, a red-headed stepchild who has the ability to pilot a mech called Tauburn, a Psy-body. Now, Psy-bodies are just these sort of mechs. They are kind of like reflections of your own self, only they only appear in zero time, and zero time is the time in which all the mechs are only allowed to reside. If you're a mech, you probably live in zero time. However, there is an evil organization known as Kirabosh who want to take the Psy bodies and destroy Zero Time so that they can come into the real world and probably F shit up with those Psy bodies, because if the mechs existed in the real world, well, humanity doesn't really know about them, so some things get screwed. Now, my biggest problem with the plot isn't actually the plot itself, more or less the way it's presented. It's got a very episodic monster of the week type feel with it, where you got Talburn just goes in there and wrecks shit up, and he fights a new mech every single episode. Almost every single episode. It's kind of like how G Gundam started out, for example. You really do have that episodic feel. You come in, you start off at the end of the round. Now here's what really bothers me. You got some high school drama, some high school drama, and some high school drama 3/4 of the episode. Then the last fourth, almost every episode, our character Takuto has to come in, pilot his Psy body, and take out somebody else's Psy body. And the thing that tickled me the most is you can tell there's a lot of characters in this show, because when he kills a Psy body, well, that character loses their badge. So, since I already gave you this little spiel on how it's episodic, I guess you can think that there's going to be a lot of characters to develop. Too many characters to develop. Probably my next point. Let's get on with the characters, shall we? Now, I'm only really going to talk about the main three characters because there's just too many to cover. We've got Takuto, Sugata, and Wako. These are the three main characters. They're also best buds. Like, forever. Even though they really just met Takuto when he first showed up to the island. Now, Sugata is actually the heir to the Emperor Saibody Samek, and Wako is actually a Shrine Maiden. Shrine Maidens need to be nullified in order to activate Samek. So, these two are actually best friends since childhood before Takuto even came along. In fact, they're the ones who fished Takuto out. Now, this being said, I kind of feel like Takuto should have been a third wheel, yet he wasn't, but I won't really touch on that anymore because the acting proves to me that their friendship did seem genuine, as well as the writing. Now, Takuto, though, is actually the real character you're supposed to be rooting for. He's a nice guy, he's charming, he's the main character, he's got that crazy main character hair. Oh boy, it's right. He's a really cool character, too. He just says things with his cool little Japanese accent, like, it's a pincha. That just really gets to you, man. You just feel it inside. You know, the acting was really well done, but we'll touch on that later. And he's also supposed to be the love interest for Wako, because Wako's one of the Shrine Maidens, she's the main female, he's the main male lead, although you could argue that Sugata is one of the main characters too, but I'll argue that he's kind of not, because he's kind of irrelevant, except he's sort of just a plot device, In fact, most characters in this show are just plot devices to get the plot rolling, and that's what I didn't really like. I did like the villain, however, that purple-haired devil him. He was a bit of a charming person too, but I guess after you realize his backstory and Takato's backstory, you'll realize why they're both so charming. Now, even though Sugata isn't really that relevant of a character, let's go back to Takato and Wako's romance. Yeah, they kind of got the romance going on. The ironic thing is, though, Wako and Sugata are actually engaged. Why? Because since she's a shrine maiden, and he's the one who pilots Samek, the Emperor's Body, it is actually conceived by their families to have the two, because that's just the way it is. They never properly explain why that's the way it is. I assume it has something to do with the Shrine Maiden nullifying the Psi Body, but really, they don't really give explanation. In fact, there's a lot of things they don't give explanation for that you just sort of have to forgive it for. Now, as far as the actual animation goes, it's actually very well done by Studio Bones, and it's very fluid with its movements. It's just the designs I do not like. Now, characters' designs are off and on. Yeah, they've got the crazy hair and the crazy eyes, but at the same time they look relatively plain and have absolutely no real detail put into them. On the offhand as well, they all wear the same uniform, so there's basically no variety as far as designs go. Except for the Kitabosh industry. In that Kitabosh organization, they've got these cool, weird little ball mask outfits. Some of them look pretty gay, some of them look cool, kind of like the mech designs. Now, all the mechs are off and on. Some of them look cool, some of them look bad, but the biggest offender is the main character's mech, Tauburn. His mech looks ugly. I hate his mech design. I hate it with a passion. By the halfway point, I finally got used to it. I was numbed. That's all. Numbed. And that's about all I have on the animation. Animation good. Designs, not so good. Finally, we're on the soundtrack. Now, most of the soundtrack was actually mediocre, but there were two tracks that really stood out to me. One was the first opening. I loved the first opening. Actually, make that three. The second half's ending song really stuck with me. As well, as far as the first ending goes and the second opening goes, I don't really like either of them. They're mediocre, and so is most of the soundtrack. Now, most of the pieces do their job, but there's really only one song that really sticks out with me. In the first several episodes, there was a song called Monochrome that would turn on every time the battle was about to start. When it was going into zero time, that song was playing, and I loved that song. Warning though, the song Monochrome gets turned off like for most of the rest of the show, but it does make a comeback in the very last episode, and I loved it. In fact, I almost cried. Almost cried, but I don't cry. Here's my final verdict. Should you watch Star Driver? Yeah, you should. It's a unique mech show. It's got a lot of uniquities to it, actually. Even the designs are very unique, even if they're hit or miss, and there's some of them that I downright hate. Not to mention, there's a lack in character development in a lot of areas, but the main cast is developed, and really, when you're watching a show, that's all you need to be developed is the main cast, as well as the plot's a bit predictable at times, but hey, that doesn't mean it's any less enjoyable. Well, it does mean it's a little bit less enjoyable, but hey, it's still enjoyable nonetheless. A 7 out of 10.